Sama is the ninth factor of the path, and the very fact that I am talking about the ninth factor may be surprising. It's an unusual thing. So usually the path is the Eightfold Path. However, the formula is sometimes tenfold. The last two factors are Sama Jnana and Sama Vimutti. Vimutti is freedom or liberation, that's what it means. And Jnana is the ninth factor, meaning knowledge. And knowledge of what? Knowledge of liberating truth. And I believe this knowledge is also not just of what it means to be liberated, but also any kind of truths that are liberating. In the Gnostic movement, we call these comprehensions. Every time you comprehend something, it's allowed to eliminate your ego. Your Divine Mother, Tara, in the context of Buddhism, she is allowed to eliminate or exterminate the samskaras, the conditionings, limiting beliefs and things like that, and those aggregates get removed and the consciousness is liberated, percentage by percentage. So it's the kind of knowledge that comes from having solved a puzzle of life, a cosmic puzzle, and now you have to get a proper perspective on the situation. Or rather, you have an upright perspective on this situation of why certain sufferings arise. So you are informed. The pieces of the puzzle have been assembled, and you have now solved the problem of life. You found out why you and other beings suffer. So that solution is knowledge. We'll know if it's a true solution if it issues in liberation. From a Buddhist point of view, it is only really knowledge if it changes you fundamentally. It is not abstract knowledge. It's definitely not intellectual knowledge. It's not the ability to explain something or to compare things or to compare facts. This is a very deep fundamental knowledge, and it changes the way you've evolved over many lifetimes. You're removing that evolution, which is typically conditioning, involution. You're you're basically taking back years of evolution in a way that's just only made you more complicated psychologically, and going back to your psychological source, which is free consciousness. And that's a good thing. That's where liberation abides. Many people can explain the point, but they're simply articulate, well-informed, well-informed sufferers. People who have some intellectual understanding of their suffering, but that is at the intellectual level. People who can try to outsmart their problems, or who think of things in a different way, in a different angle, reframing. But the Buddha is not interested in being able to explain or articulate things, or to think positively in such a logical way. He wants the results to be liberation. It's only right knowledge if it is the solution to the problem of suffering, and it has been integrated. There are levels of intellectual knowledge that we need, intellectual comprehensions, but not everything we comprehend is an intellectual thing. A lot of it is emotional. In fact, we have to comprehend at all levels of psyche, the four modes or the four elements. We have to comprehend things at levels of water, air, fire, and this all has to do with, fire is like self-esteem, Self-assuredness, understanding things emotionally, is water. Depth of character is water. Understanding things logically, reframing, that's air, and so on. I might as well give the example of earth, just so I don't miss anything. So with earth, getting over laziness, being practical, actually doing what you're studying, being consistent, devoted. Now, we may not even be able to explain it very well, certain things, a problem or our suffering to a person or to others, but as long as it is clear to us that knowledge has arisen, we don't necessarily have to. So the first noble truth is that there is suffering. You have fully understood this truth, and it's now knowledge of the truth of suffering. So that's why, there's no liberation when someone simply says there is suffering. That's the first noble truth. Oftentimes that is not enough. That usually doesn't do very much for us. We have to look into this. We have to meditate on it. We have to experience it. And then you've understood the cause of suffering as well. That becomes knowledge. That's the second truth. The third truth is the cessation of suffering. This is something that you realize and experience, which involves the next path factor, the path itself, the Eightfold Path. So the Eightfold Path is the fourth truth. And you also have knowledge of that. So in its totality, that means you've completed Samma Samadhi. Right concentration has deposited you at the doorway to right knowledge. Issuing in what it's supposed to be. Samma Samadhi is not merely concentration either. It is the concentration at the service of right view. In fact, it's at the service of all the other factors of the Eightfold Path. Right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness. It serves, sustains, and is the culmination of those other factors. And just as those other factors of the path serve right concentration, all 8 are now at the service of knowledge. You're on a mission to free yourself from suffering, which requires a whole set of learning and skills. It's like entering an enormous library where you first have to learn to read before you can find the parts that help you solve your mission. So you'll know whether you have adequately passed this test when this knowledge is clear to you, when you are clear about how suffering arises and how it ceases. This knowledge is the understanding of how suffering subsides into cessation. How do you know that it is true knowledge? How will you know if the next next factor of the path follows? The Samma Vimutti, which is right freedom or liberation. You'll know if you have the right concentration for the barred gate when the gate opens and you step out. It's like finding your way out of a maze, and you have the right combination of information and you enter it into the lock of the final doorway. The doorway swings open. So that is how you know your knowledge is right. The difference between knowledge and freedom is that knowledge is knowing how to open the door, while freedom is actually stepping through it. So you see, this imagery in many myths involves mazes or journeys, or the Odyssey. There is often a final block, an entrance to a cave or a doorway that requires a specific password or a key, and once spoken, it swings open and the hero steps through. So that is the process of right knowledge and right liberation. unlocking the door and then passing through it. And this is a beautiful part of the path and its imagery. These factors do not always have to be specifically included, as the Buddha taught the Eightfold Path on a regular basis. But however, the Eightfold Path circles back in itself. Samma Samadhi informs right view, which in turn informs right intention. In the most succinct versions, you do not always articulate these last two factors, but they are implied. We should assume that they exist, or they are somewhere in these steps. And also, when you're performing the Eightfold Path, you kind of stumble across these steps anyway. You just naturally fall into them, or you walk through these steps. So people often ask where the liberation is in the Eightfold Path, since it ends at Samma Samadhi, but this is inherent in the process. When you have enough samadhi, you are downloading knowledge through samadhi, and that knowledge is liberating. If you read various accounts attempting to explain the Tenfold Path, you'll see diverse academic opinions. Some wonder if it refers to the absolute knowledge of arahantship or the specific knowledge the Buddha possessed. And these conversations can become too academic. You must always go back to the main thrust of the Buddha teaching. There is suffering and there is an end to suffering. That is the point of the exercise. Anything referring to knowledge and liberation must refer to suffering and its cessation. Knowledge and liberation both admit degrees. You can attain a degree of freedom and suffer less than you did before. And that's a form of freedom. However, you are not ultimately finished with the path until you are an arahant. The Buddha is not satisfied with anything less than full liberation. While the stages from the first to the fourth are all forms of knowledge and liberation, the process is not complete until arahantship. This is the nature of knowledge and release. We should recognize that even before reaching the first stage of enlightenment, there are various degrees of suffering reduction as well. In ordinary life, some people experience intense and unnecessary suffering. It is unbearable, just these traumas that just completely change a person's life. You could say just ruin people's lives, crush their dreams. And similar to psychiatric neurosis, while others fall toward the middle of the spectrum with suffering that is not continuous, and those at the higher end of this normative curve suffer even less, as they are better able to let go of the past and move past difficult situations. But they're not yet enlightened, and when life is too easy, you don't have comprehension of anything meaningful. You don't have comprehension of suffering, so it is good to suffer a little bit. Even within the worldling's dimension, referred to by the term patujana, for a person who has not yet entered the higher path or any stage of enlightenment, there are varying degrees of suffering. So reducing this suffering in any way, even without reaching a specific degree of enlightenment, is a positive step toward knowledge and freedom. However, truly irreversible understanding occurs at the stage of sotapanna, the first stage of enlightenment, known as stream entry, which involves both knowledge and freedom. So these two factors, knowledge and freedom, interplay at each of the four stages of enlightenment. They also manifest in ordinary life through the practice of meditation, reflection on the Four Noble Truths, and the development of ethics, and mindfulness and concentration, As these qualities increase, there is a steady decrease in personal turmoil and suffering. While the 10-factor path is not as commonly discussed as the Eightfold Path, it appears in the suttas on several occasions. So understanding the Tenfold Path is essential for being a well-informed Buddhist.